This is Sports Bettor Court with Dan Lust on Bettor Sports Network.
Good evening and welcome to another episode of the Sports Bettor Court. Each and every week we take you across the sports law world and the sports betting world. Tonight, our sports saga takes us to Washington, D.C. The Dan Snyder era is finally over. Ding dong. Well, Dan is not quite dead. He's kind of hanging around here. So just some fun facts, right? Washington, D.C., huge media market, obviously not the biggest in terms of fan attendance. The team sells for a whopping $6 billion, despite what I'm about to tell you. Now, I say the Dan Snyder saga is not quite over because Dan still has a couple lawsuits that he's got to answer to. A couple liabilities hanging around, right? As they said back in the day with Lucy, some explaining to do. Now, $6 billion is what the team is sold for. I think Snyder had about $1 billion in debt that was hanging around. Now, we got to take you back to DC. Even though the fans are happy that the Josh Harris era is among us, Dan Snyder is still very much a part of this equation. So what we know, right, and this story is very near and dear to me. I've been following the story for about 3 years. July of 2020, the Washington Post puts out an expose about cheerleaders in a toxic workplace. Nothing really doing, right? Snyder's still hanging around, still kicking. Not an issue, right? Congressional hearing pops around. And then all of a sudden, people start to take notice. Advertisers start to drop out. And we start to have a real problem in Washington, D.C. Now, this is, we don't really credit journalists really ever, but this is, I think, a good time to do it. Between the Washington Post reporting and ESPN's reporting, some real journalists got on the nose of this, and out goes Dan Snyder. So on the back end of this, we have Dan Snyder out. He collects $6 billion, but goes down in a plume of smoke, now known as one of the worst owners in the history of modern day sports. Now, Dan Snyder, I think, is about $1 billion in debt, so he's not quite taking home the full $5 billion. But let's talk about what he has to pay also on the way out. A record-breaking, unprecedented $60 million fine on the way out. Now, for people like me and you, and I'm sure most people, $60 billion, a lot of money. Dan Snyder, chump change, right? The guy's just making $6 billion. What is $60 million to a guy that's about to make $6 billion? But for Dan Snyder, truthfully, this is an end of a horrendous saga in Washington sports history. The team has won, I think, 2 playoff games, maybe in his entire history with the franchise. That's the same, I think, one more times than the DEA has raided Washington HQ's offices. That's not hyperbole. You can look that up. No one talks about it, but yes, they were raided. Now, on the back end of this, the attorney generals in the DMV area are still investigating. The FBI is still investigating. And now what do we have? We have the NFL kind of indicting one of their own. The Mary Jo White report is out, and it confirms some of our worst fears with respect to Dan Snyder. These, we can talk about owners stealing money from other owners and billionaires stealing money from billionaires. That appears to be confirmed by the report. Dan Snyder underreporting ticket revenue, which was supposed to be shared with the other owners. Owners aren't happy about that. And because owners aren't happy about that, stealing money from billionaires, which we should care about, the rest of the dirty laundry is aired. And principal to that, an accusation of sexual harassment and sexual assault from a former team employee was, from the large part, confirmed by this report that was, remember, commissioned by the NFL. First time in NFL history, right? You talk about being protected by the shield. The NFL decided to let this one go. They did a little Toro with the bull, and they moved the shield away and let Dan Snyder get hit with it. Now, maybe news that this report is released. We do have a written report, which we didn't have in the first iteration of Dan Snyder. We have to talk about when this report was released. Josh Harris' sale is finalized, and within 10 minutes of owners approving the sale to Josh Harris, this report comes out, a 23-page scathing report. And remember, this is the second investigation the NFL has commissioned into Dan Snyder. The first, by someone by the name of Beth Wilkinson, was commissioned for a written report. No written report. Written report just decides to take a day off. No written report, even though the NFL in the retainer, in the engagement letter, according to ESPN, was asked for, just not received for some reason. So we couldn't go through the devil in the details here. But we do have this 23-page report. Dan Snyder gets it on the way out. But again, ding dong, Dan is not quite dead, right? Dan might be, I think, in Paris sailing the world on his yacht, but still got to answer to these lawsuits. Just because you have a new owner taking over doesn't extinguish the liability on the back end. But this time for our Washington Commanders fans, they can laugh. right? Because all of this liability seems to be centered on Dan Snyder. Josh Harris refused to sign those indemnification clauses, according to reports, and Dan Snyder's on the hook of it. Dan Snyder was trying to get the new owner to be on the hook for those old liabilities. Dan, you are still very much on the hook of it. But at least football fans, we can laugh now as you're not bringing down the league. And now owner valuations get to go up $6 billion. So that'll do it for our sports monologue. And now we bring in the combatants after we come back from break. Stay tuned.
The Detroit Lions select Sam Laporta, tight end, Iowa.
Had to go with your boy Sam Laporta there to pair with TJ Hawkinson.
Sammy, I couldn't double down on rookie tight ends. I think that would take it. That's taking it a little too far.
This could be one of the most exciting rookie tight end classes in a while, just based on the archetypes of these guys, and the Dalton Kincaids and the Sam Laportas. Obviously, Green Bay drafted two themselves with Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave. So after Kincaid, I would say is probably the consensus with tight ends. Like, who do you like as far as the best ball, like an end of best ball? Do you like Laporta, or is there anybody else you like more?
I do like Laporta. We're looking for guys that can be a top 2 target on their team. So any path, any argument you could make, right? So you can make the argument that Dalton Kincaid is going to be a top 2 target with after Stephon Diggs. You can make an argument that with Jamison Williams suspended, now Sam Laporta is just going to play straight up wide receiver. He looks like a wide receiver. Why can't he line up out wide at split end, right? It's like Marvin Jones and Amon-Ra St. Brown. I would also throw another name in the ring, and I don't mind, since we're doing this for the fans, for the kids. He's still on the board. Luke Musgrave on your Packers. They're not super loaded at wide receiver. We like the guy Reed they drafted, but you never know. So why can't Luke Musgrave be a big slot? In fact, they drafted 2 tight ends, Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave. Tucker Kraft is more of an inline guy. They might just go 2 tight ends right away. Tucker Kraft inline, Luke Musgrave in the slot. Why can't he be a target monster for Jordan Love? So those are the guys, those are the conditions that you need for a rookie tight end to succeed. They need to not only be the best pass catching tight end on the team, but a top 2 pass catcher on the team outright. That's how you get Kyle Pitts. Evan Ingram as a rookie was top 5 because Odell Beckham Jr. hurt his knee 4 weeks into the year. So that's the formula. We're looking for guys that can actually be a top target right away. Otherwise, we're playing the sit and wait long-term game, which is what you're doing with guys like Michael Mayer.
Sports Bettor Court is now in session. Now for tonight's litigants. First, Jeff Paur. Jeff is a senior fantasy writer for Real Time Fantasy Sports, home of the Fantasy Championship with a grand prize of $500,000. Go to rtsports.com for more info. Litigant number 2, Joe Murray, host of 98.5 The Sports Hub in Boston. Check him out weeknights from 7 to 11 p.m. All rise for the Honorable Judge Lust. Court is now in session.
Welcome, gentlemen. Listen, they gave us somebody to do ad reads here. I guess we're moving up. Okay, a little bit of housekeeping. Just a reminder of the rules. First, Joe, Jeff, pleasure to have you on. Now, the winner might get to stay on. They might not. Depends if your best bet wins here. But generally, the format, we play best 2 out of 3. We play 3 rounds here. If necessary, we'll go to a round 3. But what I just got to convince me, you got to make the best argument for a particular bet. And at the end, I will pick the best bet of the 3 winning bets, and our audience can come ride with us. Now, we started the monologue. We talked a little bit about Dan Snyder. We talked about the Washington Commanders. Let's take our first bet over to the NFC East. Quick look at the odds here. We got Philly minus 135 to win the division crown. We have Dallas at plus 190. The New York Giants at plus 850, and Washington plus 1,600. Joe, I'm going to start with you. Where does your best bet take you?
So it's definitely not Washington off the bat, but we'll see if they can find a quarterback and get going. I'm fading the Giants a little bit this year. I just think that they still have some pieces in-house they need to take care of financially. They already got their quarterback, and we'll see what they can do after a second season, in that Dayball offense. So I'm actually going Dallas as the pick. it's more of a fade to Philadelphia. Teams that lose the Super Bowl struggle the next year. I know that Philly led the NFL in sacks last season. They got a quarterback on the rise. But I think there was some simple moves that Dallas made. Stephon Gilmore in particular, Brandon Cooks as well. Plus, I don't like taking teams with vig. So give me Dallas plus 190, hoping not to lead the league in interceptions.
Okay, Jeff, we got Dallas on the board. Are you going Washington here?
No Washington for me. I like Philadelphia to win the division. I know the odds are not in favor of big payout, but I love the Eagles. They ranked third in points per game last year, third in yards offensively as well. Defense ranked eighth in points allowed and second in yards allowed. So it's a complete team. I think they did well to even upgrade that team this offseason with two really good picks in the first round of the draft. They have a ton of playmakers offensively. Jalen Hurts, he's just coming into his own. I think he's going to be even better this year. And I like the Eagles to win that division.
Gentlemen, let's start here. And I don't mind those. You obviously take the two biggest favorites. No one has any love for my G-men. I should say I worked for the Giants for 5 years. So if you want brownie points with the judge, do your homework. Probably one of you would have won on that. But now I got to pick Philly or I got to pick Dallas. Not in love with this scenario. Now, Jeff, I'm going to start with you here. Plus money we got on the Dallas side. And we have, a little bit of vig on the Eagles side. Convince me on the Eagles. Right? The Eagles generally, usually there's that Super Bowl hangover, I think, as Joe pointed out. Why are the Eagles not going to have a Super Bowl hangover here?
I just think they even upgraded a team that went to the Super Bowl. I know that Miles Sanders is gone, but they added DeAndre Swift, Rashad Penny, and I think those guys are super talented as long as they're on the field. They have a great offensive line to run behind. The defense added firepower. Like I mentioned, 2 first-round picks. They took Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, could both help that defensive line. Carter was expected to go near first overall, fell to 9th because of some off-the-field issues. So I think they got a steal there. And then Smith, he was the top-rated prospect in all of college football 2019 recruiting class. I think he's going to be a top edge rusher as well. So I think they upgraded on both sides of the ball and could improve on an already good last season.
Joe, Dallas. Everybody talks about it. They say this is the year of Dallas. This is the year the offensive line holds up. No Zeke, but I guess we're going to have a better year. Sell me on Dallas.
Yeah, I'm not promise you anything of that. All I know is Zeke Elliott is out. Tony Pollard's going to going for a big contract despite being franchised right now. But I'll just say this. No team has won the NFC East in back-to-back years in, 15 years. And granted, it was the Eagles the last to do it, but I'm not betting on it. It just hasn't happened in a long time. And here's one more thing on the Eagles. Yes, great team, right? Everything you said, it's all true. But they have new coordinators. I think they might have some hiccups early on. And again, the team that loses the Super Bowl generally loses week 1, and I'm already taking the Patriots week 1. So I've already chalked that one up, and I'm not a homer by any means. I crushed the Patriots, but I know something about coaching being here. I think there could be some coaching issues on that Philly staff.
Okay, I think I'm ready to render my decision, gentlemen. Now, low-key, everyone talks about the Eagles making it all the way to the Super Bowl. How about the fact that Dallas was a very quiet 12-5 last year, and quietly, very quietly, we're in striking distance of the division when kind of Jalen Hurts got hurt. Now, listen, you have a running quarterback. So that's the value. I think the stock on Jalen Hurts is going up. You always have to worry about that injury bug. Every team is one quarterback injury away from a lost season. This is a bet here on the odds, plus 190. Dallas looks a little juicy here. I'm going to go with Dallas. So, Joe, I guess you get round 1 here. So, okay, everyone hang here. Fantasy Alarm, Fantasy Football Draft Guide, and All-Pro subscription, including the Fantasy Alarm Fantasy Football Guide, your cheat sheet, and one-stop shop for dominating your drafts. It's digital and constantly updated with new information. Purchase the draft guide for $26.99 or get it for free with a monthly or annual subscription to Fantasy Alarm. Start your 7-day trial of Fantasy Alarm All-Pro and get immediate free access to the draft guide at fantasyalarm.com. Now, we're going to keep this edition, round 2, on the gridiron, gentlemen, and I hope you've done your homework. The NFL draft had a very big running back. And we're not talking about Bijan Robinson here. We're talking about Jahmyr Gibbs of the Detroit Lions. Swift is gone, talking about those Philadelphia Eagles. And now Jahmyr Gibbs has the backfield to himself over in Detroit. So I'm going to give you the numbers. Ready? 590 rushing yards for Jahmyr Gibbs. Who wants the over? Who wants the under? Jeff, I'll let you take the first shot here.
I'm taking the over. I think he's going to crush it. The Lions did not use a first-round pick on Gibbs to sit him. They're going to unleash him from day one. Dan Campbell likes to run the ball as well. Lions were 13th in rush attempts last season. Jamal Williams, 262 rush attempts last year. That's a lot of carries to replace. He's gone. Gibbs is a lot more talented than Jamal Williams. Give me Gibbs over 590 rushing yards.
Joe, that number's low. But go ahead.
Absolutely low. I think he should achieve the number and pass it, but here's why I'm going to go against it. I'm always against drafting a first-round quarterback, right? Look what's going on in this league. You can find other running backs as undrafted, late, whatever. So I'm against the whole taking a running back in the first round, but maybe Montgomery does get the bulk of the carries here. I don't know. Maybe Jared Goff tries to throw it and they air it out a little more. Last year, they went for it too much on fourth down. Maybe it's less carries for the second running back. So I'm just going to fade it for the simple fact that rookie running backs tend to struggle in their first season.
Okay, fair. But let's look counter here. I had DeAndre Swift on my fantasy team last year. Kind of an up and down year. Gentlemen, pop quiz. I don't know if anyone knows this answer. How many rushing yards did Swift have last year in that Detroit backfield, albeit with some injuries? What was the rushing yard total? Over under 590 for Swift last year. What do we think?
I'd say over. I think he had around 700.
Wow.
Oh, under. Wow.
Under. According to Football Reference, we got 542. So that number is baked in here. That was their premium running back, and I think everyone talked about Swift. I think he made a run towards the end of the fantasy football season, so it left kind of a good taste in people's mouth. But that number is pretty low, and I think it surprises. That's why 590 is baked in. But to the larger point, Jahmyr Gibbs and listen, your fellow judge here. I dabble in the arts of betting. I might have had over 1.5 running backs drafted in the first round of the draft. I didn't expect Gibbs to be taken that early, though. So if you invest a very early first-round pick on a running back, not just one, obviously Bijan Robinson was taken early, but Gibbs early, I think you're going to have more than 590 yards. So, Joe, you got the under here, right?
Yeah, and listen, I didn't set the line. Personally, I think he should go over that, but things happen. This is a guy that actually didn't get touches in college at Alabama because they wanted their quarterback to throw the ball more. That could happen this year. They want to make Amon-Ra St. Brown a number one receiver. So maybe the second running back after Montgomery gets less touches because they want to air it out. Not to mention Justin Jackson's in the mix. They drafted another kid, Jahmyr Jefferson, that they want to get into the mix. So maybe Gibbs, although should go over the number, maybe gets less touches because they want to air it out.
You know, it's funny. This number, you really just need to be healthy for about 7 weeks, right? You set the world on fire. You need to be healthy for a little bit. 5.9 is an interesting number. Now, the reason I wanted to ask you guys about this particular bet, we're in the midst of a running back controversy. No running backs are getting paid. You would think no running backs would be taken in the first round. All of a sudden, we had two, and we have Saquon getting the franchise tag over here. So 590 is an interesting number, and I think it sends a message. Jeff, I'll go to you here. Do you think this current running back controversy that we have with running backs not getting paid influences this number at all? Do you think Detroit wants to send a message that they had this high-level pick and they're going to invest in the kid?
That's a good question. I do think, though, like you said, if you're using this high level of a pick on a running back, you're going to use them a lot. So I think they're invested in them. They're going to give them the ball a lot. And I don't know if the other running back controversy is going to play too much into this at this point.
Okay, final question. Oh, Joe, go ahead.
I was just going to jump in. The big running back, besides being Derrick Henry, how many actually achieve their numbers and levels? It's just they're sometimes short yardage situations, and that's what they are. So although I think it should go over the number, I think there is value on going under for the simple fact this guy's still a backup.
Let's just say when we get to fantasy football season, people are going to be taking Jahmyr Gibbs, expecting a much higher number than 590 for his over-under. Now, I'll leave you guys with this. I want to close this out. This I'm on the fence with this one. I'm not really sure. This is a 5.9. It's a weird number. This is where I think it is. Jeff, you're going to have to sell me a little bit here. You ready for this?
Yep.
Do you think Detroit is going to be a winning team? That's going to influence the number. Do you really buy the hype in Detroit? We wanted it last year, but at the end of the year, they closed so hot. This is not the question, but do you think Detroit has a real shot at that division?
I do. I think they have a real shot. I'm a believer. I think the offensive line as well had some injury issues, which impacted them. PFF ranks them 5th overall going into this season. I think that's a really good number and really bodes well for Gibbs as well. So I think a strong offensive line. They have good weapons at receiver also with Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think they're set up for a big season. I have faith in them to win that division.
Joe, I was going to ask you what you think, but as The Rock once said, it doesn't matter what you think. Jeff, round 2. I'm buying it. Listen, winning teams run the ball. I'm going with the Lions here. 1-1 as we head into the rubber match. We'll be right back.
I feel like this is a quietly contentious point in Dynasty Fantasy Football, what it means to actually be rebuilding. Some people say you should never truly be rebuilding. How do you view the rebuilding versus competing dichotomy in Dynasty?
So I will be the first person to acknowledge that my preferred format of fantasy football is just redraft. The years that I have played Dynasty, it has been I've drafted a win now team because I've seen people that have just gotten into the cycle of rebuilding and thus they just don't make any progress. So if you're rebuilding for the 5th year in a row, I just, I don't know exactly how you get out of it, but yeah, it's definitely something that can happen. And a lot of people, especially when we come out of the NFL draft, everyone's just instantly shipping off, draft picks and everything. So, I mean, it's definitely something that can happen.
Joey, do you feel similarly to it? Do you feel like you see people getting stuck in the rebuilding loop?
I mean, I would say people that try to rebuild in the beginning of seasons, of their fantasy seasons, I see them get stuck in that rut. I would really try to only ever rebuild if I knew I was going to miss the playoffs. Like, I'm always trying to play to win, even if it's maybe I don't know.
I think my big thing is the word rebuild is a much shorter time frame than I think most people say it should be. Like, they look at rebuild as like 3 years out competing. Rebuild, you're looking to compete next season. You know what I mean? Like, if you're doing it now, you're looking to revamp, and maybe there's a one season where you ship it off, but that very next season you should be competing. If you're doing it like that, I'm cool with it, but you got to have a plan, not just keep getting the young players, keep getting the draft picks. Otherwise, you end up like Tim. Maybe not like Tim who gets a bye, but you make the playoffs, you're in that like 4 to 6 range every year, just hovering in the middle. Nothing ever gets better, nothing ever gets worse.
I think I play like you in Dynasty, Simon. I play in 3-year windows.
100%. That's my go-to. And with the rate at which Dynasty leagues turn over, you should really only ever play in a 3-year window.
We are back, gentlemen, for round 3. Before we start, Caesars up to $12.50 back on your first bet, plus 1,000 tier credits, plus 1,000 rewards using promo code FULLFA at fantasyalarm.com/Caesars. Now, gentlemen, we enter round 3. Joe, Jeff, gonna have to sell me here. This is gonna be a tough one. We're gonna stick on the gridiron. Now, a big story, rumor, innuendo. This is what we deal with, but as lawyers, we separate fact from fiction. People are saying that if Bill Belichick doesn't have a big year this year in New England, might get the axe here, might have a little bit of a case of wrongful termination for one of the greatest football coaches in the history of the sport. Joe, I imagine you're at Boston Sports Hub. I think you have some thoughts here. So let's start with you. New England Patriots win total this year is at 7.5. I think you're in the know here. What do you like, the over or the under?
Under, and
Under.
I nailed it last year. I had 8. Now, granted, a couple of games could have swung. Final game of the year, they could have beat Buffalo. It should have gone over. It didn't. But that's the whole thing about this post-Tom Brady era. They're just not good anymore. They're not good. And I'll just say this. Look at the quarterbacks in their division. Aaron Rodgers, Josh Allen, Tua Tagovailoa. Like, they can't even beat those teams. So what makes you think they're going to beat the other teams with their premier quarterbacks around the league? Last year, their defense was only good because they beat backup quarterbacks and still won 8 games. So here, tougher schedule, Belichick on the hot seat, and again, Mac Jones, the quarterback. Belichick and Mac Jones aren't even speaking right now. Under.
Okay, Jeff, before I give it to you, I have to do something. Ready? You see this cup? This is me pouring one out. Pour one out to the St. Louis Rams. I followed that litigation very closely. I love the St. Louis Rams. Down with the LA Rams, but we'll talk about that offline. Okay, go ahead.
I agree with that. You could get me going for a long time, but I appreciate that. Appreciate the shout out. I'm going over here, and here's the biggest reason. I think this is an unbelievable stat. The Patriots have reached at least 8 wins, all but one season since 2001. Since 2001. That is crazy. You got to give mad respect to Bill Belichick. He is just the master coach. I know he's on the hot seat. I think he's going to have a lot to prove this year. They actually have an offensive coordinator this year who knows what they're doing and should really help Mac Jones, in my opinion. I think the defense keeps them in games as well. I know Joe said they beat backup quarterbacks, but still, they allowed just the 10th most points in all of football last year. So the defense keeps them in games. Offense should be better with Bill O'Brien. I'm taking the over here.
Well, listen, your judge over here does some research, and I actually had that one ready to go, Jeff. That was a good one. Now, pop quiz. Joe, this is going to be for you. What was 2001? That was, I think, well, the number is in 2000, they went 5-11. Why is that year significant?
Well, that was the year they drafted Tom Brady.
And Bill Belichick's first year with the team. Since the Bill Belichick era has started, there's only been 2 seasons since the year 2000 where the Patriots have not hit that win total. And Jeff, you sold the team a little bit short. And Joe, I know, listen, you're the Boston guy, but I'm going to read out some numbers, right? These aren't just like they're winning 8 games or 9 games. This is 14, 14, 10, 12, 16, 11, 10, 10. We're getting a lot of numbers. Now, in 2020, that's the one year that Jeff left out, which I think is relevant. You got to tell your judge all the facts, not just the ones that help. You got to tell them the good ones and the bad ones. 2020 was a recent year, right? They went 7-9. That was that COVID year. That was post Tom Brady, right? First year post Tom Brady. And then in 2021, Mac Jones era, first year, they go 10-7. And the most recent year in the Mac Jones era, 8-9. So those last 3 years, we talked about in the law, we could talk about, like, put it this way, guys, I'll give you a little bit of a legal lesson. If you gave me a case that was a good case, and it was from the year 2000, okay. Now, Joe, if you gave me a case that was from 2022 and it was on point, that's a much more valuable case to the judge. Joe, sell me on the Patriots having a down year here.
For all the love that Bill O'Brien is getting, he's won nothing in his career. He's won absolutely nothing. How about this? He had Tom Brady and won nothing. He had the Heisman Trophy winner at Alabama and won nothing. And they think that this is going to fix it? This guy was a brutal coach, right? Oh, but he's going to fix everything. He's going to fix Mac Jones. I will tell you, and I'll even make a bet if you want, Judge. I think Bailey Zappi is going to be the quarterback for the Patriots at some point this season.
Now, you could bet with the judge. You just can't bribe the judge, but we're good. We're good. Jeff, go ahead.
So you talked about the offense and being without Tom Brady, but I don't think you can overlook the defense. This has nothing to do with Tom Brady for the most part. But in terms of being a top 10 defense in points allowed, they've been a top 10 defense in points allowed 16 of the last 18 seasons. Nothing to do with Tom Brady, nothing to do with the offense. The defense is going to keep them in games. That offense has got to be better. And I like the addition of Mike Gesicki a lot. Now they have Gesicki, Hunter Henry. They've always done well when they've had 2 tight ends in their offense. They have that again this season. And while Bill O'Brien might not have won anything, he's better than what they had last year, calling plays in New England. So I think Gesicki, Hunter Henry are going to form a really good duo and really help that offense a lot.
Jeff, again, I mentioned it's good to do the research if you're the judge. The Matt Patricia era is over. So, yes, your point wasn't about Tom Brady, but we should talk about Matt Patricia here. And that might be the reason in and of itself the Patriots had a down year last year. Now, we should talk about the last name as I give you guys your final chance to win me over because I'm not really sure who I'm going with here. This is really all about Bill Belichick legacy. There was all this talk in Boston. I'm sure, Joe, you were a big part of it. Is it Brady? Is it Belichick? Is it both of them? Right now, it looks a lot like Tom Brady when he leaves and the Bucs go ahead and win the Super Bowl. Another down year for the Patriots. If Robert Kraft goes ahead and fires Bill Belichick, the answer to the question is Tom Brady. Now, Bill Belichick's legacy, listen, he's still a Hall of Fame coach, but his legacy in terms of like greatest of all time, very much, I think, does depend on the way he leaves and ends his tenure in New England. Joe, this is for you. You ready for this?
Yes.
Do you think that Bill Belichick is going to be out of New England in the next 2 years? Because that's what you're telling me, that you have the under. You think Bill Belichick's gone.
So I think that if they win 7 games this year, you're going to hear the owner say, I want to make the playoffs. He's the one who brought Bill O'Brien in. He's the one that has Gerard Mayo up next as the head coach. Here's what Bill Belichick's got going for him. He has a successful season and goes over wins 8 games. He now only needs another 8 wins or so to break Don Shula's record. I don't think he gets fired, but I'll tell you right now, just look at the quarterbacks they're playing. Look at their division. They went to the playoffs once since Tom Brady's era, and they got blown out. They can't beat Buffalo. They can't beat Miami. Like, they just can't beat these teams. So as great as their defense is, they can't stop Josh Allen. They just can't beat him. So for me, you think Mac Jones is the savior? I am completely out, and I'm going to bet on the under 7.5.
Okay. I think I'm ready, guys. Now, listen, when you're the judge, sometimes it's the one that has the better argument. Sometimes it's the person that speaks last. And sometimes it's the person that has both. Joe, that was a next level cut here. There's no way that Bill Belichick is getting fired and setting the record for wins on a different franchise. And maybe that seat's not so hot. Maybe he feels that he doesn't have the pressure. I don't know how confident I'm feeling in this bet here, but I do think that Bill Belichick feels empowered. He's got to make sure he doesn't leave New England not on his own terms. Joe, as strange as this sounds, I guess you have the inside information, which lawyers we know is illegal, but in sports betting, I guess that's fine. Joe, you are a winner. Now, we're going to do something new this week. We're going to take our best bet to end the day here. So just we can recap it. At some point, we'll get the fancy graphics team on us. We'll have all the graphics up. But I'm taking some notes here. Dallas plus 190 was the first win. Jahmyr Gibbs over 590 was the second bet. And then we have New England under 7.5. My spider senses are telling me. I think I like Dallas to win the division. I'm sorry. Listen, my Giants fans, my brethren, my coworkers that used to work there, don't listen to this, but kind of like Dallas for the division plus 190. That seems pretty juicy. So, Joe, you get the win, and I'm going with your best bet. So, if we get this wrong, and then all of our listeners follow us here, and you get it wrong, listen, you got to go to jail. That'll do it for another episode of the Sports Bettor Court. Thank you for joining us. And Joe, Jeff, thank you very much. And follow these two on social. Those are the handles right here. And see you next week, Wednesday, 6:00.
Sports Bettor Court is now adjourned. Tune in next week for the Honorable Judge Dan Lust.